I'm in my 60s. There are people that I know who are very accomplished business people, and they've stopped working and they've taken that knowledge and it doesn't go anywhere. And I think that's a real shame, because there are people that really want it. And quite often in my role as advisor, if I'm talking to people in their 50s, it's really difficult, because quite often I get called in when there are problems and they don't really want to listen to me. If you talk to young people, people are starting businesses, people are in companies and middle management, rising up through the ranks in their 20s and 30s, they want the experience that people of my generation have. And I felt that I wanted to share some of that stuff in a way which was accessible and available to people in all different business situations and different points in their career, which is why the book is aimed at startups and aimed at corporates. I didn't set out to write about leadership or management. I set out to tell stories that I felt would help people, and I hope they do. There are some guiding principles which sort of run as a theme throughout the book, really. At the end of each chapter, we have our action points, which we can sort of take away and do on a Monday. I talk about spending time more wisely. Everybody I speak to seems to not have enough time. Everyone's too busy. And actually, if you ask them about the time they're spending, it doesn't appear to be as productive as they would like. You know, online diaries push people into meetings they don't really want to go to. Things aren't structured the way they should do. So one of the things I say to people is, on a Sunday evening, when you're looking in your calendar, what does it tell you? Wherever you are in an organisation, review what you're doing and ask yourself those deep questions. Is my time being spent in the right way? One of the other guiding principles is about doing things now. Procrastination is the enemy of productivity in many respects. You know, none of us like doing the things that are hard, and we put them off. And one finds perhaps that things can be done more quickly and more effectively if you do them in the immediate moment. I'm not saying that you shouldn't prioritise. I'm not saying you should drop everything for the last thing, but what I am saying is, why not do it now? Evidence-based thinking is something which has sort of, I think, come to me really throughout my business career. And the question I ask is, how do you really know? So before you're about to make it, and there are two or three things here which I think are worth highlighting. One is, when you hire people, we tend to go on gut and instinct and intuition, and that's important evidence, but it isn't the only evidence. And then someone will join an organisation and they don't work out. And you think, well, why didn't they work out? And the answer is that we didn't really get them to provide the evidence of the skills that we were trying to hire. They talked a good game, we liked them, that was enough. The second thing that I've come across a lot is about businesses that buy other businesses and acquisitions. They fall in love with these things. And the evidence might point to this not being a great acquisition, it may point to the synergies not matching, it may point to all sorts of problems, but they've fallen in love with the business and they go and buy it. And I think that perhaps the ability that we all need more of is to be able to take a breath, stand back and ask that really important question: what evidence is there here? How do we really know this is a good idea? Multitasking is something which I absolutely don't believe in. The evidence about multitasking is that for most people it doesn't work. If you're on an aeroplane and the pilot was multitasking, you probably wouldn't think that was a great idea. Those principles apply everywhere. There are things that you can do which are habitual, which do allow you to multitask. For example, if I'm doing the ironing, I can probably watch a TV program at the same time. That's simply because the ironing has an automatic function. I've done it many times, I don't have to think about it. You might argue to some extent driving a car is the same. You can listen to a radio program and you can drive a car at the same time. There are people that might even argue with that. But I think that multitasking really isn't effective. And a lot of people recently have written books about this. One book I particularly like is The One Thing, and it just says, what is the one thing I should be doing here? And you can apply that to everything. What is the one thing I should be doing today to move my business forward? What is the one thing I should be doing to make my partner happy tonight? Well, that's a big question, and I think sort of reflecting perhaps back to my early 20s, where things started to get a bit more serious. You know, I was in a relationship, marriage was on the horizon. I'd bought a property, was trying to buy a property. You know, and I had to sort of shape up a bit, really, shake off my teenage rebellious years, and that's when I started to take things seriously. And really, the turning point for me was really being mentored in a business, and I felt that I was failing. I wasn't able to operate properly. I was actually selling confectionery into the supermarket and high street chains and doing it very badly, and I was about to chuck it in, and I got a new boss, and the new boss basically gave me some business lessons and taught me how to do stuff, and that was a turning point for me. And then I went to work for a television company, and when I arrived there I found that my contemporaries were very bright. You know, they'd all been to great universities and good schools, and they were out talking to people about selling them advertising space, and none of them sold anything really. And I turned up as somebody who was a bit more streetwise, who'd basically been told you make 15 calls a day and don't come home until you've sold something. And I just applied that really throughout the rest of my business life. You know, I think reflecting on it, I've always set myself targets and say I want to get from here to here, I want to do this. And sometimes I do and sometimes I don't, sometimes they're soft. But I like the rigour of lists, I like the rigour of targets. When someone says KPIs, a lot of people's eyes glaze over. I quite like those things. You know, I like measurement. I like to feel a sense of achievement. And I think that's the principal lesson that's driven me. I don't know if there's too much bullshit. I mean, businesses and business leaders, you know, they have to talk their companies up. They want to give a positive image. I think that probably what's changed in the last few years is people get called out a lot more easily than they did. I think the sort of rock star leaders are really not where the thinking is these days. I think authenticity is much more important. I think it's easier in many respects to be honest as a business leader now, to say, do you know what, that didn't quite go to plan, we're going to do this instead. I think there was massive pressure in the past on business leaders to always spin everything. And I think that actually the successful business leaders of the future don't deal in bullshit. Of course they talk their business up, of course they're positive about it, of course they want to see the upside. I mean, if you don't believe in the business, who else is going to? But I think that people temper those things now with greater humility, and I think that's important.